If you want to know the exact moment I realized my family valued appearances over integrity, it wasn't during a shouting match or a dramatic holiday dinner. It was on a Tuesday morning in late May, under the pristine, filtered sunlight of the Oakwood Country Club parking lot. The air smelled of freshly cut fescue and expensive sunscreen. I was sitting in the cab of my 2016 Ford F-150, a truck that had served me well, but was currently covered in a layer of mulch dust and dry mud from a job site in the valley. The air conditioning rattled, sounding like a dying fan, and my work boots were caked in clay. I wasn't there to play golf. I was there to meet with the grounds committee about a redesign of the landscape around the 18th hole. I was the lead architect on the project. As I gathered my blueprints, a vehicle purred into the reserved spot next to me. It wasn't just a car, it was a statement. A brand new Lincoln Navigator Black Label, painted in a deep iridescent chroma crystal blue that looked like liquid sapphire. It was massive, imposing, and utterly flawless. I froze. My hand gripped the door handle of my truck until my knuckles turned white. That was the car. The specific model, the custom color, the interior trim I had picked out 6 months ago, in a brochure with my grandmother. The driver's door opened, and out stepped my sister, Cynthia. At 29, Cynthia was the family masterpiece. She wore tennis whites that had never seen a bead of sweat, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that cost more to style than my monthly rent. She didn't see me at first. She was too busy talking loudly into her phone, her voice carrying that practiced melodic lilt she used when she wanted everyone to know she was important. "No, Mother, the suspension is divine," Cynthia laughed, slamming the heavy door of the SUV with a careless thud that made me wince. "It's perfect for showing clients around, although honestly, I think the leather is a bit stiff. I might need to have it conditioned again." She didn't have clients. Cynthia had obtained her real estate license 3 years ago and had sold exactly 0 houses. She spent her days networking, which was a euphemism for drinking mimosas and charging lunches to my father's account. I lowered my window. "Nice ride, Cynthia." She jumped, spinning around. When she saw me in my dusty truck, her expression shifted from surprise to a pitying sneer. "Oh, Darlene, I didn't see you there behind that wall of dirt." She gestured vaguely at my truck. "What are you doing here? Deliveries are around the back." "I'm the landscape architect for the club, Cynthia. You know that?" I said, my voice steady, despite the magma rising in my chest. "That's a lot of car for a Tuesday morning tennis match." Cynthia adjusted her sunglasses, leaning against the hood, my hood. "Daddy thought it projected the right image. You know how competitive the market is. I need to look successful to be successful." She paused, a cruel glint in her eyes. "Besides, Mother said this beast would be wasted on you. You just fill it with shovels and fertilizer. It's better this way. We're keeping it nice for the family." She beeped the lock, turned on her heel, and walked toward the clubhouse without looking back. I sat there for a long time. The heat radiating off the asphalt distorted the air, making the world look wobbly and unsure. That SUV wasn't just a vehicle. It was a gift from my grandmother, Constance, purchased specifically for me to expand my business. It was supposed to be the tool that leveled me up from the gardener to the executive architect I was. But Constance was in Europe recovering from hip surgery at a clinic in the Swiss Alps, completely unaware that her son Preston and her daughter-in-law Judith, my parents, had intercepted her gift the moment it arrived. They had handed the keys to the golden child, leaving me with nothing but the dust on my boots and a burning sense of injustice. I started my truck, the engine coughing before catching, and I made a silent vow. Cynthia might have the keys today, but she had no idea who she had just stolen from. To understand why the theft of a car cut so deep, you have to understand Constance. My grandmother was not the type of woman who baked cookies or knitted sweaters. Constance was a titan. She had taken over my grandfather's small construction firm in the late 70s and turned it into a commercial empire that reshaped the skyline of the tri-state area. She was 82, stood 5'2", and terrified grown men in boardrooms. Growing up, I was the only one who didn't fear her. Cynthia and my parents treated Constance like a ticking time bomb of inheritance money, walking on eggshells, agreeing with everything she said, while secretly rolling their eyes. They wanted her money, but they didn't want her. I wanted her. I loved her sharpness, her refusal to suffer fools, and her obsession with structure and design. While Cynthia was off at cheerleading camp, I spent my summers in Constance's home office, learning how to read blueprints and understand load-bearing walls. "You have the eye, Darlene," she told me once, tracing a line on a site plan with a manicured fingernail. "Your father sees a building and counts the rent checks. Your sister sees a building and checks her reflection in the glass. You see the foundation. You understand that without the dirt and the steel, the pretty parts fall down." 6 months ago, before her hip started giving her trouble, I had driven Constance to a new development site. I was pitching a contract to design the green spaces for a luxury complex. I nailed the presentation, but my old truck had backfired loudly as we left the parking lot, drawing stares from the investors. Constance hadn't said anything then. But a week later, she called me to her study. "You are a professional, Darlene. You are talented. But in this world, unfortunately, perception is currency," she had said, sliding a brochure across her mahogany desk. It was for the Lincoln Navigator. "I want to buy this for you. Not for groceries, not for vanity. For work. You need a mobile office. You need to show up to a site and have the developers look at you and see a peer, not a contractor." I had tried to refuse. It was too much. "It is an investment," Constance had insisted, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Consider it a company asset. I'm putting it in my name for insurance purposes for the first year, but it is yours. We'll order it custom. Black label. Something powerful." We spent the afternoon picking the specifications. She was excited. It was one of the last things we did together before she flew to Zurich for her operation. She squeezed my hand at the airport departure gate. "When I get back, I want to see you running this town, Darlene. Use the tools I give you." That memory played on a loop in my head as I watched Cynthia drive away. The car wasn't a toy. It was Constance's vote of confidence in me. It was her way of saying she saw me, respected me, and believed in my future. By giving it to Cynthia, my parents hadn't just stolen a vehicle. They had stolen that message. They had looked at Constance's specific instructions and decided they knew better. They decided that Cynthia's vanity was more important than my livelihood. I remembered the day the truck had arrived 3 months ago. I was standing in the driveway of my parents' estate, a sprawling colonial revival that they couldn't really afford to maintain without Constance's quarterly gifts. The delivery driver had lowered the ramp, and the Lincoln rolled down gleaming like a dark jewel. My heart had soared. I stepped forward, hand outstretched for the keys. And that was when my father, Preston, stepped in front of me. He was wearing his cashmere sweater draped over his shoulders, a look he thought made him look distinguished, but really just made him look soft. "Darlene, hold on," he had said, snatching the fob from the driver. "Your mother and I have been discussing this." "Discussing what?" I asked, confusion clouding my joy. "Grandma ordered this for me, for my business." "Ideally, yes," my mother Judith chimed in, walking out of the front door with a glass of Chardonnay in hand. It was 11 a.m. "But let's be practical, darling. You work in dirt. You haul trees. You have muddy boots." "I have a change of shoes. This is for client meetings," I argued. "Cynthia has been struggling." Judith sighed, as if Cynthia's inability to wake up before noon was a tragic illness. "She needs a boost. Real estate is all about image. If she shows up in her Honda, nobody takes her seriously. If she shows up in this, well, she'll sell millions. It's for the good of the family." "Grandma Constance bought this for me," I repeated, my voice rising. "Grandmother isn't here," Preston said sharply. "She's in Switzerland. She's confused, Darlene. She doesn't understand the day-to-day logistics. We are making an executive decision. Cynthia will utilize the vehicle until you have a role that requires it. You can keep using the truck. It fits your brand better." It fits your brand. That was code for, you are the worker bee. You stay in the dirt. I didn't hand over the keys, I never touched them. Preston pocketed them with a dismissive finality that made my stomach churn. Don't make a scene, Darlene, he warned, his eyes darting to the delivery driver who was waiting for a signature. You know how stress affects your mother. I stood there paralyzed by a lifetime of conditioning. Since I was a child, the rule in the house was simple. Keep the peace. Don't upset Judith. Don't challenge Preston's fragile ego. And above all, sacrifice everything for Cynthia because Cynthia was special. Cynthia was the one who was supposed to marry a senator or a CEO. I was just the sturdy, reliable Darlene. You're stealing from Grandma, I said, my voice shaking. We are managing family assets, Judith corrected, taking a sip of wine. And if you say a word to Constance while she is recovering, you will be responsible for her setback. Do you hear me? The doctor said she needs absolute calm. No drama. If you call her and whine about a car, you are being selfish. That was the checkmate. They knew I loved Constance more than anything. They knew I wouldn't risk her health over a possession. So I swallowed the rage. It tasted like battery acid. I watched as Cynthia came running out of the house, squealing, jumping up and down like a teenager receiving her first convertible. She didn't thank me. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just grabbed the keys from Dad and hopped in. Does it have Bluetooth? She shouted through the open window. That was 3 months ago. Since then, I had been living in a state of silent fury. I watched my business suffer. 2 weeks after the car arrived, I had a meeting with a developer from New York. My truck's AC died on the way there. I arrived sweating, my blouse clinging to my back, my hair frizzy from the humidity. The developer was polite, but I saw his eyes drift to my truck in the parking lot, the rusted bumper, the dent in the side. I didn't get the contract. We went with a firm that feels a bit more established, his email read. Meanwhile, the Lincoln Navigator began to deteriorate. I saw it around town. Cynthia treated the $80,000 machine like a locker room on wheels. I saw it parked illegally in fire lanes. I saw it outside nightclubs at 2 a.m. One afternoon, I walked past it in the grocery store parking lot. The majestic chroma crystal blue paint was dulled by a layer of road salt and grime that hadn't been washed off in weeks. I peered through the window. The passenger seat, that beautiful Venetian leather seat tailored to my specifications, was piled high with empty Starbucks cups, gym bags, and discarded fast food wrappers. There was a sticky-looking stain on the center console. It looked like a frat house on wheels. It broke my heart. It wasn't just about the money, it was the disrespect. It was the total disregard for the value of things. Constance had built her company brick by brick. She treated every tool, every machine, every employee with respect. Cynthia treated the world like a tissue she could use and throw away. I considered calling Constance a dozen times, but every time I picked up the phone, I heard Judith's voice. You'll cause a stroke. You'll kill her. So I waited. I focused on my work. I saved every penny, and I began to document. It started small. I took a photo of the car parked in a handicap spot without a permit. I took a photo of the scratches on the rims from Cynthia hitting curbs. I wasn't sure what I would do with them, but I knew I needed proof. My parents were masters of gaslighting. They would claim the car was pristine, that I was crazy. I needed hard evidence. But the real turning point came in July. I was at a nursery picking out Japanese maples for a client when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an old friend from high school who worked at an auto body shop on the edge of town, a place known for cheap cash, only repairs, not high-end service. Hey Darlene, the text read. Isn't this your sister's new Lincoln? It just came in on a tow truck. Looks like she fought a concrete pillar and lost. Attached was a photo. The front bumper was hanging off. The headlight was shattered. The grille, that distinctive chrome mesh grille, was caved in. I dropped the potted maple. It shattered on the concrete dirt, spilling over my boots. I didn't care. I stared at the image, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel helpless. I felt a cold, calculating clarity. They weren't going to tell Constance. I knew it in my bones. They were going to patch it up, hide it, and lie. Thanks, Mike, I texted back. Do me a favor. Send me a picture of the invoice when they pay, and keep the old parts if you can. The game had changed. They had moved from theft to destruction, and soon the Queen would be coming home. The weeks following the crash were a masterclass in deception. My parents were scrambling. I didn't say a word to them about knowing. I continued to show up for Sunday dinners, eating Judith's dry roast chicken, listening to Preston brag about his golf handicap, and watching Cynthia scroll through Instagram at the table. The SUV was conspicuously absent. "Where's the Lincoln, Cynthia?" I asked casually, over dessert one Sunday, stabbing a piece of pie. The tension in the room spiked instantly. Preston cleared his throat loudly. Judith reached for her wineglass. Cynthia didn't look up. "Oh, it's at the dealer," Cynthia lied, her voice bored. "Routine maintenance. You know these high-performance engines need special tuning. It's taking forever. The service is terrible." "Really?" I asked, feigning innocence. "I thought oil changes were quick. It's been gone for 2 weeks." "It's a sensor issue," Preston interjected quickly. "Complicated electronics. Nothing major. Just recalibrating." "Right," I said. "Recalibrating." I knew for a fact that the car was currently sitting in the back lot of Joe's Discount Auto, waiting for a third-party bumper that didn't quite match the factory paint. Mike, my friend at the shop, was keeping me updated. "Preston is paying cash," Mike had told me over the phone. "He didn't want to go through insurance, said something about rates, but I think he just doesn't want a paper trail." Of course he didn't. The car was technically in Constance's name. If an insurance claim was filed, the alert would go to her lawyers and then to her. Preston was using his own retirement savings or perhaps money siphoned from the house maintenance fund to cover up his daughter's incompetence. But the silence was the hardest part. I had to watch them lie to Constance during our weekly video calls. Constance looked frail, but recovering, sitting in a wheelchair on a balcony overlooking the Swiss Alps. "And how is the new acquisition working out?" Constance asked during one call. "I haven't seen any photos of it on site, Darlene." My heart hammered. Judith was hovering just out of frame of the iPad, making frantic, cut-it-out motions with her hand. "It's wonderful, Grandma," I said, the lie tasting like ash. "It drives like a dream." "Good call," Constance nodded. "I want to see it when I get back. I want to see mud on the tires. A clean truck is a useless truck." "You will," I promised. When the call ended, Judith exhaled as if she'd just defused a bomb. "Good girl," she said, patting my shoulder. "See, was that so hard? We just need to get through the next few weeks until she's home and settled. Then we can figure things out." "Figure what out?" I asked. "Are you going to give it back?" "Darlene, please," Cynthia groaned. "I'm used to it now. I can't go back to the Honda. It smells like wet dog. Besides, I have a showing next week for a $3 million estate. I need the Lincoln." "You crashed it, Cynthia," I whispered. The room went dead silent. Cynthia's face went pale, then red. "I did not. It was a scratch. Someone hit me in a parking lot." "I have the photos," I said calmly. "I know where it is. I know Dad is paying cash to fix it." Preston stood up, his face purple. "You have been spying on your sister. This is exactly why you can't have nice things, Darlene. You are petty. You are vindictive." "I'm vindictive." I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. "You stole my car. You let her wreck it. And now you're lying to your mother." "We are protecting this family," Preston shouted. "If Constance finds out, she will overreact. She is old. She doesn't understand modern accidents. We are fixing it. It will be good as new. And you," he pointed a trembling finger at me, "you will keep your mouth shut. If you tell her, you are cutting your own throat. Do you think she'll leave the company to a snitch, to someone who causes trouble?" I looked at my father, a man who had never built anything in his life, who lived off the dividends of a woman he feared. I'm not the one causing trouble, Dad, I said, grabbing my keys. But you better hope that body shop does a damn good job. As I walked out, I realized something. They were terrified. They weren't just being mean. They were scared. They knew their lifestyle hung by a thread, Constance's goodwill, and they had just frayed that thread to the breaking point. The heat of August dragged on. My truck finally died completely. The transmission blew on the highway. I had to rent a compact economy car to get to my job sites, cramming my equipment into the back seat. It was humiliating. Every time I squeezed into that tiny car, my resolve hardened. Then the invitation arrived. Constance was coming home. Not just coming home, she was hosting her annual end-of-summer garden party. It was the social event of the season for our circle. Everyone would be there. Investors, partners, rivals. The date was set for late August. Constance requested that the whole family be there early to greet her. She's taking a private jet back on Tuesday, Judith told me, her voice shrill with anxiety. The party is Saturday. We have 4 days to get everything perfect. Darlene wears something less distinct, something pastel, and for God's sake, smile. Is the car ready? I asked. It's back in the garage, Judith said quickly. It looks fine. We're going to keep it in the garage during the party. We'll tell her it's getting detailed. Sure, I said. Whatever you say. I hung up the phone and looked at the pile of documents on my desk. The photos from Mike, the copy of the repair invoice, and one more thing. I had discovered a document from the DM5 that Mike had flagged for me. They hadn't just fixed the car. They had tried to transfer the insurance registration to Cynthia's name to avoid alerting Constance, forging my signature on the transfer request form because the car was meant to be in my care. It was fraud. Clumsy, desperate fraud. I wasn't going to be the snitch. I wasn't going to run to Grandma tattling. I was going to let them hang themselves. Constance was the smartest woman I knew. All she needed was a thread and she would pull the whole tapestry apart. I prepared my outfit for the party, not pastel. I bought a sharp navy blue dress suit, professional, serious, like the architect I was. The queen was returning and the court was in chaos. The morning of the party, the air was thick with humidity and dread. I arrived at the estate an hour early as requested. The grounds were immaculate. Ironically, I had designed the landscaping here 5 years ago, and it was the only thing about the property that looked authentic. The hydrangeas were in full explosive bloom, blue and purple heads bobbing in the breeze. Inside the house was a war zone of nervous energy. Caterers were setting up on the terrace. Judith was shouting at a florist about the shade of the peonies. Preston was pacing the hallway, wiping sweat from his forehead with a monogrammed handkerchief. Cynthia was in the living room checking her makeup in a compact mirror. She looked beautiful, I had to admit, in a silk floral dress, but there was a tightness around her eyes. "Where is it?" I asked, looking out the window toward the detached 4-car garage. "Garage Bay 3, Preston snapped. "Under a tarp. We're telling her the paint protection film is curing and it can't be exposed to direct sunlight for 24 hours. It's a plausible excuse." "Very creative," I said dryly. "Just go with it, Darlene," Judith hissed. "Please, for once." At 11 a.m., a black town car rolled up the long driveway. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Preston straightened his tie so hard I thought he might choke. Judith slapped on a smile that looked painful. Cynthia put away her phone. The driver opened the door and Constance stepped out. She used a cane, a sleek carbon fiber thing that looked more like a weapon than a medical aid. She had lost a little weight, her cheekbones sharper, her silver hair cut in a chic short bob. But her eyes, those steel-gray eyes, were as bright and terrifying as ever. "Mother," Preston boomed, rushing forward to embrace her. "Welcome home. You look magnificent." Constance accepted the hug, stiffly tapping his back with her free hand. "Easy, Preston. My hip is titanium, not my ribs." She pulled back and scanned the lineup. She looked at Judith. "Judith, you've changed your hair. It's ambitious." Judith's smile wavered. Then she looked at Cynthia. "Cynthia, I see you're still wearing white after Labor Day is approaching. Bold! Finally, her eyes landed on me. The hardness softened just a fraction. Darlene, you look tired. Are you working? Yes, Grandma. We have 3 projects in closing right now. Good. She nodded. Productivity is the best medicine. She walked past us into the house, her cane clicking rhythmically on the marble foyer. I'm going to rest for an hour before the guests arrive. Preston, ensure the 82 Bordeaux is decanted. And Darlene, she paused on the stairs, not turning around. I trust the fleet is in good order. The hallway went silent. Perfect order, Mother, Preston squeaked. Excellent, she said and ascended the stairs. We all exhaled. Okay, Preston whispered. We're in the clear. She's tired. She won't ask to see it today. We just need to get through the lunch. The guests began to arrive at noon. It was the typical crowd: Arthur Sterling, the bank president, Helen Moore, the head of the Preservation Society, various board members of Constance's company. I circulated, shaking hands, talking about sustainable drainage systems and native plant integration. I felt in my element discussing work, even if I felt like an alien in my own family. Cynthia spent the hour flirting with the son of a senator near the open bar. At 1 p.m., we all sat down for the luncheon on the terrace. It was a long table set with white linens and silver that sparkled in the sun. Constance sat at the head, looking like a monarch holding court. I was seated midway down opposite Cynthia. The conversation was polite and boring until the main course was cleared. Constance took a sip of water and set her glass down with a deliberate clink. So, she said, her voice carrying over the low murmur of conversation, I have been away for 4 months. I have missed so much. Cynthia, tell me about your real estate ventures. Have you sold the property on Highland Avenue? Cynthia choked slightly on her champagne. Oh, Highland, no, Grandma. The market is tricky, but I have several interested parties. I see, Constance said. And Darlene? How is the landscaping firm? Busy, I said. We just landed the contract for the new library annex. Wonderful, Constance smiled. I imagine the new vehicle has been helpful for that hauling plans meeting the board. I opened my mouth, but Judith jumped in. Actually, Constance, Judith said, her voice high and trilly. Darlene felt the Lincoln was a bit much for the job sites, you know, with the mud and the tools, so she and Cynthia came to a lovely arrangement. Cynthia has been using it to shuttle high-end clients. It really fits the luxury real estate image better, don't you think? I stared at my mother. It was a direct lie told in front of 20 people. Constance turned her head slowly to look at me. Her expression was unreadable. Is that so, Darlene? You found the car unsuitable. This was it. The moment. I could lie and save them, or I could tell the truth and destroy the lunch. I looked at Preston. He was staring at his plate, sweating. I looked at Cynthia. She was glaring at me, daring me to speak. I started. She loves the truck, Mother, Preston interjected. Darlene is a truck girl, always has been. Constance hummed. A truck girl. Interesting. She turned to Cynthia. And you, Cynthia, how do you like the Lincoln? Cynthia beamed, thinking she was safe. Oh, Grandma, it's amazing. It drives like a dream. I feel so safe in it. My clients are so impressed. Safe, Constance repeated. That is the most important thing, safety. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. I'm glad to hear you say that, Cynthia, because I was very worried when I got the notification. The air left the terrace. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. Notifications, huh? Preston whispered. Yes, Constance said, tapping her screen. You see, when I ordered the car, I had the Guardian package installed. It's a wonderful piece of technology. It alerts the owner me of any collision, sudden braking, or airbag deployment. It also uploads the dashcam footage to the cloud instantly. Cynthia dropped her fork. It clattered loudly against the china. I received a very distressing alert on July 14th. Constance continued, her voice calm, conversational, as if discussing the weather. A collision with a concrete pillar at 11:43 p.m. And then, curiously, no insurance claim was filed, just a notification that the vehicle was moved to Joe's Discount Auto. She looked up and her eyes were no longer gray. They were fire. Would anyone like to explain why my $80,000 investment was being repaired with Bondo and cash in a back alley? The silence on the terrace was absolute. The guests, Arthur, Helen, and the others, were frozen forks halfway to their mouths. This was the kind of family drama they usually only whispered about, and now it was being served up as the main course. Preston tried to speak, but only a squeak came out. He cleared his throat. "Mother, we didn't want to worry you. You were in recovery." "So you lied," Constance said. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her quiet disappointment was heavier than any scream. "You intercepted a gift I bought for Darlene. You gave it to Cynthia. And when Cynthia wrecked it, you covered it up." "It wasn't a wreck," Cynthia cried out, tears instantly springing to her eyes. "It was a tiny bump. And it wasn't my fault. The pillar was in a blind spot." "Shall we watch the video?" Constance asked. She held up her phone and tapped a button. She had cast it to the large outdoor TV screen mounted on the patio wall usually used for watching sports. The screen flickered to life. The grainy footage from the dashcam appeared. It showed the hood of the Lincoln moving through a parking garage. Music was blasting, loud thumping bass. Cynthia's voice rang out from the speakers, slightly slurred. "God, this thing is a tank. I hate parking it. Why did Grandma buy such a bus?" A friend's voice from the passenger seat. "Who cares? It's free. Besides, that old bat probably won't even notice if you scratch it. She's halfway to senile." Cynthia's laugh on the video was loud and cruel. "True. As long as Mom keeps Darlene quiet, I'm good. Darlene is such a doormat. She's probably crying in her truck right now." Then a sickening crunch. The car jolted. The screen went black as the engine cut. Constance turned off the TV. I looked at Cynthia. Her face was a mask of horror. She wasn't crying anymore. She was looking at the ground, wishing it would swallow her whole. "Senile." Constance repeated the word, tasting it. "Old bat." "Grandma, I didn't mean it," Cynthia sobbed. "I was just joking. It was just talk." "And you?" Constance turned to Preston and Judith. "You facilitated this. You took property that did not belong to you. You forged insurance documents. Yes, I saw the transfer attempt. Darlene didn't sign that, did she?" "That is a felony, Preston." Preston had gone pale gray. "Mother, please. Not in front of the guests." "The guests." Constance looked around the table. "Arthur here is my banker. Helen is my oldest friend. They know me. They know that the only thing I value more than competence is loyalty. And I see neither at this end of the table." She stood up, leaning heavily on her cane. "Preston, bring the car around. Now." "Mother, it's under a tarp." "Now." Constance's voice cracked like a whip. Preston scrambled up, knocking his chair over, and ran toward the garage. While he was gone, nobody moved. Judith was weeping silently into her napkin. I just sat there, feeling a strange mix of vindication and sadness. I didn't want them to be humiliated. I just wanted them to be fair. But they had chosen this path. Preston returned 5 minutes later, driving the Lincoln. He parked it on the gravel drive next to the terrace. From a distance, it looked shiny. But as Constance walked toward it, the flaws revealed themselves. The blue paint on the front bumper didn't quite match the hood. It was a shade too dark flatter, lacking the metallic flake of the factory finish. The gap between the fender and the light was uneven. It was a hasty cosmetic fix meant to fool an old woman. Constance ran her hand over the rough paint. She shook her head. You treated this car the way you treat this family, she said softly. You polished the surface and let the structure rot. And she turned to me. Darlene, come here. I walked over to her. My legs felt heavy. Do you want this car? She asked. I looked at the Lincoln. It was tainted now. It had been abused, mocked, and crashed, but it was still the symbol of her belief in me. I want what it represents, I said honestly. I want the respect you intended to give me. Constance nodded. She held out her hand to Preston. Keys. Preston dropped the fob into her palm. His hand was shaking so bad he almost dropped it. Constance placed the keys in my hand. They were warm. Take it, she said. Take it to the dealership tomorrow. Have them fix it properly. Send the bill to Preston. He will pay every cent, even if he has to sell his golf clubs. She turned back to the table. The party is over. Preston, Judith, Cynthia. We need to discuss your living arrangements and your allowances. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Constance didn't believe in long, drawn-out punishments. She believed in correction. We went into the study, just the family. The guests were ushered out by a very apologetic catering staff. Constance sat behind her desk. She didn't look like a grandmother anymore. She looked like the CEO she was. Preston, Judith, she began. You have lived in this house for 20 years rent-free. You receive a monthly stipend of $15,000 from the family trust. You have your country club memberships paid for. Mother, we... Silence. She cut Preston off. That ends today. You have proven that you cannot manage assets. You cannot manage your children. You cannot manage your own greed. The stipend is suspended indefinitely. Judith gasped. But how will we live the mortgage on the vacation home? The bills? You will get jobs, Constance said simply. Or you will downsize. I suggest you sell the vacation home. It's hardly used anyway. She turned to Cynthia. And you, the golden child. Cynthia was slumped in a chair, her mascara running. You have been living in the penthouse apartment owned by the company in the city. You drive a car you didn't pay for. You have a job you don't do. I try, Grandma, Cynthia whimpered. No, you don't, Constance said. You pose. You are evicted from the penthouse effective immediately. You have 48 hours to vacate. I suggest you find a roommate. Or perhaps you can move back in here with your parents and help them learn to cook, since they won't be able to afford the cook anymore. That's not fair, Cynthia screamed. You're ruining my life over a car. I am saving your life, Constance snapped. You are 29 years old and you are a parasite. If I continue to feed you, you will never learn to hunt. You are cut off. Completely. Finally, she looked at me. Darlene, I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything. Grandma, I said. I do. I left you alone with them. I knew who they were and I hoped they would be better. That was my mistake. I won't make it again. She pulled a file from her desk drawer. This is the succession plan for the company. I was going to wait another 2 years. But I see now that time is a luxury we don't have. Effective next month, I am appointing you as the Vice President of Operations. You will oversee all development projects, including the ones your father was pretending to manage. Preston's jaw dropped. She's a gardener, Mother. She is a landscape architect with a master's degree, Constance corrected. And unlike you, she knows the value of a dollar and the importance of the truth. She will be your boss, Preston. If you want a paycheck, you will report to her. I looked at my father, the man who had taken my keys, the man who had told me to stay in the dirt. I expect a weekly report on your desk by Friday at noon, Dad, I said. Preston looked away defeated. The next few days were a blur of activity. I took the Lincoln to the dealership. The service manager, a man who knew Constance well, looked at the bumper and whistled. Who did this hack job? He asked. Don't ask, I said. Just strip it, fix it, and make it new. Send the bill to Preston Miller. With pleasure, he grinned. I went to the penthouse to help, or rather supervise Cynthia moving out. It was pathetic. She had so many clothes, so many bags, but nothing of substance. No books, no tools, just things. She cried the whole time, blaming me, blaming Grandma, blaming the world. You think you won? She spat at me as she dragged a Louis Vuitton trunk into the hallway. It wasn't a competition, Cynthia, I said. That was the problem. You thought it was a game. We were just trying to live. I drove my rental car to my parents' house to pick up some files for Constance. The mood in the house was funereal. The cook was gone. Judith was in the kitchen staring at a can of soup like it was an alien artifact. Do you know how to open this? She asked me, her voice trembling. I took the can opener from the drawer and opened it for her. You place it here, and you turn the handle, Mom. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw respect. Not love, maybe, but respect. She realized that while she had spent her life polishing the silver, I had learned how to mine the ore. 6 months later. It was a crisp November morning. I walked out of my townhouse, a new place I had bought with my own money closer to the office. The Lincoln Navigator sat in the driveway. It was perfect. The paint was flawless. The interior smelled of fresh leather and coffee. I had equipped the back with organized bins for my site plans, my hard hat, and yes, a pair of clean boots. I climbed into the driver's seat. The engine purred to life, a low, powerful rumble. I connected my phone, and my playlist started soft jazz. I drove to the headquarters of Miller & Sons, soon to be Miller and Granddaughter if I had my way. I parked in the spot marked Vice President. As I walked into the lobby, I saw my father. He was sitting at a small desk near the archives room. His job was to digitize 40 years of blueprints. It was tedious, boring work, but he was doing it. Good morning, Preston, I said. He looked up. He looked tired, but he also looked real. Good morning, Darlene. Here are the files you asked for. He handed me a stack of folders. Thank you, I said. Keep up the good work. I took the elevator to the top floor. Constance was waiting for me in her office. She was looking over a site map for a new eco-friendly corporate park we were bidding on. You're early, she smiled. I have a fast car, I replied. She laughed a genuine hearty sound. How is Cynthia? She got a job, I said. Receptionist at a yoga studio. She hates it, but she pays her own rent on a studio apartment. Good, Constance said. There is hope for her yet. She pushed the blueprints toward me. Now look at this drainage issue on the north quadrant. What do you see? I leaned in, tracing the lines. I see a problem, but I know how to fix it. I looked out the window of the skyscraper, watching the city bustle below. I thought about the SUV. It was just a car. Metal, glass, rubber. It would rust eventually. It would be replaced. But the lesson it carried would last forever. My parents and sister had believed that worth was something you displayed: a shiny car, a title, a zip code. They thought if they looked the part they deserved the reward. They didn't understand that the keys to the kingdom aren't given to the one who wears the crown best. They are given to the one who is willing to build the castle. Grandma Constance hadn't just given me a car. She had given me permission to stop apologizing for my ambition. She had taught me that staying in the dirt isn't a bad thing because the dirt is where things grow. I was Darlene. I was a builder, and I was finally in the driver's seat. Thank you for reading this story of justice and resilience. It's a reminder that sometimes the quietest people in the room are the ones holding the real power, and that integrity always outlasts image. Please leave a comment below with your answers, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about truth coming to light.